Hey guys, what's up? Jeff Black here again, programmer, photographer out of Tampa, Florida, welcoming you back to howtoshootmodels.com. In this series, we've been talking about achieving proper exposure. We've talked about looking at the LCD on your camera. We've talked about using your histogram, and we've talked about my most favorite technique is using the gray card. But now let's talk about the granddaddy of them all, which is a light meter. Light meters are a pretty big investment. You know, they're $200, $300, $400 for an okay light meter. I mean, you could pay $1,000 for a really tight light meter. But if you're going to drop, say, $300 on a light meter, congratulations for doing that. If you have strobes or you're thinking about buying strobe lights, it's a necessary evil. You're going to have to do that. There's not many workarounds to buy strobes and not buy the light meter. There are a couple of tricks that you can use to do that, and in a different video I'll get into that. But for the most part, at some point you are going to need to purchase a light meter. So you buy your light meter, and this is where all the chaos and problems happen. You know, you order it online, you go to a store, whatever, you buy your light meter, you bring it home, you start popping off, you know, readings, and you're setting your camera to it, and you're shooting, and you're having fun, and everything's great, and you know your pictures are going to turn out perfect. And you pull your pictures up on the computer, and they're overexposed, they're underexposed, and you're thinking, what the hell happened? You know, in theory, the light meter is not really hard. There's just a little light on, you know, a plastic dome on there. You point it towards the light, you pop the button on the side. It's going to tell you what f-stop and what shutter speeds to set your camera at. In theory, pretty simple. Well, it is simple. The problem with light meters that people don't realize is that they need to be calibrated to your camera. They will come out of the box set up semi-okay, and you might just be in luck where it's actually calibrated to your camera, but 9 times out of 10, it's not going to be calibrated to your camera. Now, it may not be something crazy where it's 4 or 5 f-stops off, but it may be a half stop, it may be a full stop off, which is going to have a negative impact on your pictures. So what you're going to need to do is calibrate that puppy to your camera. And there's a thing on the light meters themselves called dip switches. If you take the little plastic piece off the back, remove the batteries, you'll see these little switches in there called dip switches. And those dip switches can be adjusted to properly set your meter to your camera. Now, what's that going to do? It's going to change your f-stops a little bit. So how I recommend calibrating your light meter to your camera is if you were using a studio setup, you know, that would be a good place to do it because you're going to be in that studio a lot. So we would go into the studio, but let me preface that by saying if you don't have a studio, it doesn't matter. You just need to go somewhere where the light's going to be consistent for you. And basically what I would do is take it into the studio. I might set up the strobe lights, pop off a number, and let's say I was trying to achieve a 125 shutter speed at f8. So I'd set up my lights, pop it, you know, until I adjusted it where my meter was actually reading 125th at f8. So go ahead and pop it. Now I would shoot through my camera, take a couple of pictures at 125 at f8, and then what I would do is I would do what's called bracketing. In bracketing, I'm going to adjust either my shutter speed or my f-stop in my camera. Now with strobe lights, your shutter speed's not going to matter. It's not going to change your exposure. So the only thing that we have to work with to change our exposure is going to be our f-stop. So what I would do is I would have my assistant stand up there, and I'd probably just get a bunch of sheets of paper and a Sharpie and have them write, you know, maybe I'd start at 2.8. Take that picture. 3, 5, 4, 5, 6, 8, 11, 13, 16. And I would go all the way through the different f-stops. Then what I would do is I would transfer those pictures to the computer. I would take a look at them, see what pictures, you know, actually work. You know, what is the proper exposure based upon what I'm seeing on my computer screen. It may be f11, it may be 5, 6, it may be 8. You may be lucky and it actually matches up with your camera. But if it doesn't, then I'm going to need to calibrate my light meter to my camera. Once you get it calibrated, you're off to the races, man. The thing's never going to lie to you. It's the most effective and accurate way of metering your exposure. But again, it can cause a nightmare for you in the beginning if you're foolish enough to believe that this thing's coming out of the box made perfectly for your camera. So I hope that helps. Trust me, calibrate these puppies. Doesn't take a long time to do it. But once it's done, you're going to be good to go. Thanks.